around the readiness to start with the maintenance today. And they assured everyone that they are satisfied that people will continue to get water. We must remember also that the water from Lesotho augments what we have already on our side. So we already have water in South Africa, but we import the extra water from Lesotho to augment what we have. So during this period, we've got the integrated Vaal River system, which has got 14 dams, and it is augmented by water from Lesotho. So the dams along this system are in a good condition. They are full, and they've got enough water, and they are interconnected. So anytime when the main dam, the Vaal Dam, runs out of water, which is unlikely, according to our assessment, that it will happen. But in case it happens, in that unlikely event it happens, we are going to release water from one of the dams, especially the Sterkfontein one, which is always used as a reserve dam for Vaal Dam. So people will continue to get water. On the Free State side, we have been meeting with the municipalities and assisting them as well, supporting them to come up with mitigating measures. And they've been drilling boreholes, they've been storing a lot of water in their reservoirs, and also improving their abstraction point from the bulk water that we supply them. So we are assured that the people will continue to get water, but we're also calling upon people themselves to come on board and use water sparingly, but also to advise the municipalities where necessary to apply restrictions.
All right. Let me thank you so much for your time. That was Dr. Mandla Matebula, the Department of Water and Sanitation spokesperson.
Bongiwe Zwane on SAFM.
Let's look at this now. The South African Weather Service says that the snowfalls currently affecting parts of KwaZulu-Natal, the Free State and the Eastern Cape provinces are not rare occurrences at this time of the year. The snowfall experienced late last month wreaked havoc in parts of the country, killing one person and causing massive traffic jams due to the closure of major highways. Let's now speak to SABC reporter Horisani Sitole. Horisani, good afternoon to you and thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about today's media update by the Weather Service's Dr. Christine Engelbrecht and others, of course, as they talk about the fact that snowfall currently at this time of the year is not an unusual occurrence.
Yes, Bongiwe, good afternoon. They have alluded to that to say, looking back, there have been snowfalls, and there's always going to be going forward, because the southern parts and the central parts of South Africa, that's where most of these are being recorded. We talk about KwaZulu-Natal, we talk about the Eastern Cape and Free State, and other areas around those provinces. They say this has happened before. They made an example of when they gave us data dating back to 2008 to say in September, even road closures have been done in September 2008, and they said this time around, what might have caused an alarm might have been the fact that it happened at a time that people were going on long weekends, and also talking about school holidays. At that time, mostly were going down south to the coast, and some were coming inland, coming to Johannesburg and all the areas. Those are some of the issues they've alluded to, but they say they have also recorded a very deep snow this time around. That's what the only thing they've picked up to be unusual, talking about 80 centimeters of snow being recorded in some parts of the N3.
All right. And also, of course, they, the big question is what's in store for us when it comes to the week ahead, because we've seen some communities now on Tenterhooks, for example, you think Alexandra near the Jackskay River. So what are they forecasting for the rest of the week?
It seems like they are talking about it's going to be getting warm in some parts, but they say what they have predicted now, it's going to be a very dry season in overall, giving different parts. But what they've warned is that they cannot have an exact prediction of what's going to be at that time. So they have advised that people should keep their radios on, their TVs on to listen, because they'll give, for example, flash floods can happen now after my call between me and you. In the next hour or two, there can be a very massive flash flood. So they said some of these things they'll be properly predicted as time goes. So but right now it seems like it's gonna be sunny days are ahead of us.
All right, Orosan, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for speaking to us. And as you say, the unpredictability of the weather is something that, we all have to live with. 1 minute there could be localized flooding here and also there and not in different places. So certainly we've been seeing quite, different weather patterns. That was SABC reporter Orosan Sitole there taking us through the briefing there by the South African Weather Service, which was speaking about, the snowfall, because a number of people were saying, is it a usual occurrence for this time of the year? And the South Africa Weather Service is saying that it's not a rare occurrence for this time of the year. The snowfall that was experienced there late last month that wreaked havoc in parts of the country there that left people stranded is not an unusual occurrence, but certainly it speaks about preparedness. It speaks about the early warning systems that do need to be looked at and how important that's going to be going forward. But thank you so much for your time and listening to us this afternoon. We'll see you again tomorrow. Medupi is standing by with the latest news from us. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Osbongi. The top stories at 1 o'clock, the JSC sitting to go ahead as planned, and Lesotho responds to the ANC division claims. A very good afternoon. The Judicial Services Commission has resolved to go ahead with its October ruling despite the MK party's threat of legal action and demonstrations. The JSC held an urgent virtual meeting yesterday after it received a letter from the MK party's lawyers seeking a postponement of the sitting from the 7th to the 11th of this month. This request follows an interim interdict granted by the Western Cape High Court, halting Dr. John Hlophe from participating in the JSC sitting pending a review of his designation to that body. Kenny Mapanga reports.
Attorneys on behalf of the MK party contended that the effect of the interdict renders the JSC improperly constituted. JSC Chairperson, Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Mandisa Maya, however, in a response to the MK dated Tuesday, the 1st of October 2024, noted that the judgment of the Western Cape High Court does not impact the composition of the JSC, and therefore the Commission remains lawfully composed. Kani Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
ANC Gauteng Chair Panyaza Lesufi insists that there is no division between the national and the provincial ANC. He was responding to the DA's claims that he and his Gauteng leadership were defying the party's national management by supporting the removal of the former Tshwane mayor and DA member Celias Brink. Lesufi is adamant that the decision was in the ANC's best interest.
It's an unfortunate reaction from the Democratic Alliance. I really feel that they are barking at the wrong tree and crying at the wrong funeral. All the decisions that we've taken in the African National Congress, we've done so after consultation with the national leadership. Actually, in most instances, if not all, they took over even the negotiations from us and conducted the negotiations directly from national with the Democratic Alliance. It's only when they reached a deadlock that they then gave us the go-ahead to implement a recommendation that they felt that was in the best interest of the ANC.
The Western Cape High Court has officially declared the 11 fishermen who went missing at sea off the coast in Hout Bay in May this year as presumed dead. This comes after a hearing where Viking Fishing requested an order declaring the missing crew of the trawler be presumed dead for family closure. The fishermen were employed by Viking Fishing, a subsidiary of the Sea Harvest Corporation. The court says evidence suggests that the missing crew were lost when the vessel sank. It says despite the search, there's been no sighting of the missing crew reported. The court says it would have been unlikely that the fishermen would have survived a swim to the shore in the cold water. The Lesotho Water Transfer Tunnel has officially been shut down for a planned 6-month maintenance. The tunnel corrosion protection process is done every 5 years and is expected to protect the infrastructure for another 20 to 30 years. The maintenance project is critical for ensuring the integrity of the water tunnel systems, which supply 60% of Gauteng's water demand. The Lesotho Highland Project's Rientseng Molapo says this is a complex process.
Every day of the year, we are continuously transferring water. So this time around, 30th of September, midnight, we are shutting down. No more deliveries. From that time on, we open the valves to take the water out of the tunnels now. It will take about 2 weeks to 3 weeks to take that water out of the tunnels. It has to be taken in a controlled, slow fashion because you want to allow the tunnel to still maintain its integrity. It has to feel as though there is still water inside.
And the former Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is taken over as the Secretary General of NATO. Jens Stoltenberg, who steps down after a decade on the job, says the alliance is in good hands with Rutte. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen welcomed Rutte's new mandate in a post on the social media site X. More from the BBC's Jonathan Beale.
Mr. Rutte has a reputation as a consensus builder, having led 4 coalition governments in The Hague. Skills he'll need to keep the 32-member alliance united. His most pressing issue will be maintaining military support for Ukraine and persuading allies to spend more on defence. But his biggest challenge could be in dealing with the next US president, if it is Donald Trump. Rutte was one of the few European leaders to build some kind of rapport. But Trump's own scepticism of NATO could once again shake the alliance.
The top story at 1 o'clock, the Judicial Services Commission has resolved to go ahead with its October ruling despite the MK party's threat of legal action and demonstrations. The Full Circle is up next. For SAFM News, ke Modupi Makgalemele.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.1 FM in Bombela.
The world's best cooking show is finally here. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, noma upumaphi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Every Saturday, 7:30 p.m. only on S3, Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, the world's best cooking show, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
4 dynamic design duos reimagine and reinvent 4 apartments in a century-old building nestled in the vibrant suburb of Sea Point, Cape Town. Armed with creativity, determination, and a limited budget, the duos fight against the clock to transform this grand old dame into a contemporary masterpiece, all under the critical eyes of an expert judging panel. The winning duo will claim a grand prize of 300,000 Rand, with an additional 100,000 Rand going to the fan favorite team, as voted by viewers. Channel your inner wow with My Design Rules, Sundays at 7 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Akango walapa babesitsho ndisemncinci betufike nonina apha emzini hayi akango walapha bedlalana bengalazi icebo likamdala ngibamba ndingavume emphakathini awubedlala ngicela ukulungisa elanxeba lakudala ngicela ukususa ezo nyembezi kumnawe mntana
From Mazwai coming through with Gulungile, and this was the very first single of her Sankofa album, which came out around May this year after much anticipation from her fans. And of course, we know that earlier in the year, we also celebrated the 20th anniversary of her seminal solo debut album, Zabalaza in Gulungile, which is actually a song that speaks to the healing of childhood wounds that we carry with us into adulthood, and the things that often affect how we move in the world and how we see ourselves. This song also features multi-talented creator and scholar of music himself, the very good Dogotela Duduzo Makatini. That is how we kick off the show with you this afternoon. I hope that you've had a great one thus far with my colleagues keeping the conversation going all the way through from the wee hours of the morning until now, as we carry on the baton and lead the conversations that move us. Coming up today, we're looking at a study that looks into the older person's grants being not enough to support their needs. And this is a study that was preempted by a previous research study titled Funding Elder Care, and we'll find out how the two speak to each other. We'll also be catching up with the folks from the Eastern Cape Provincial Book Fair, find out what's on the itinerary and on the cards for the 2024 second edition of the Eastern Cape Provincial Book Fair. Stages, pages, screens and more is also on the agenda today. On the other side of 2 o'clock, it is a Tuesday, so we delve into health and wellness matters. And October is a breast cancer awareness month. And of course, we thought it's only right to kick off the very first day of October by having a conversation that is quite important to be held annually, of course. And we invite you, as per always, to share your perspective as well as your opinions on any of the conversations on the table on 061-410-4107. That's our WhatsApp line, or 086-000-2032 is the number you can call us on. It's also October, right? That's how the month is known within the streets. So it is October today. If you are Octobering, we wish you the very best. And of course, if you happen to have a kindergartner or a preschooler at home, no doubt this morning you woke up to a pinch and a punch for the first of the month. I think they still do that. Let's take a quick pause here and then we'll come back on the other side.
Put a spring in your step with the Espresso Morning Show.
That's right. Join us for fresh ideas, blooming trends, and vibrant tunes that are sure to brighten your day.
Discover the best ways to enjoy this season's beauty, from garden tips to spring fashion.
Come on now. Plus, get inspired with lively interviews and my favorite, the latest in entertainment.
Basically, start your mornings right with us. That's weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. only on S3.
The world's best football league makes its return to S3. Will Arsenal finally win their first title since 2004? Or will Man City continue their dominance of the league and win their 7th title under Pep Guardiola? Will the Dutchman in Erik ten Hag and Arne Slot have something to say as Man United and Liverpool step in to contest for the title? But it's not only about winning the title. For some of the 20 teams, it's a chance to improve on their performances from last season. While for others, it's the battle to avoid relegation and stay in the top flight. Every team has a point to prove. This is not just football. This is a masterpiece being played out every weekend. Channel your best sport with the English Premier League. Saturdays at 3 p.m. on S3. Open up.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
Oh, annoying. Caught in the final moments of an off-site conversation. We're just saying here with my old-timer, who's my camera operator today, that every time the mics go on, or I attempt to start the show, suddenly the voice cracks. And we can only attribute it to the change of the season, as he so rightfully points out. Right now, though, we're going to have a conversation looking at the older person's grant, and there's a study
that's found that the older person's grant is simply not enough to support their needs. Today, by the way, is International Older Persons Day. And this study was led by the University of Cape Town's Professor Eleanor Moore, who highlights the growing financial struggles that are faced by South Africa's elderly despite the recent increase in the older persons grant. And Prof. Eleanor joins us on the line now, who's with the Sociology Department at the University of Cape Town. How are you doing this afternoon?
Good morning, Bridget. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, Bridget. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I sort of preempted before our conversation began that I know that somehow, in part and somehow, this study actually links to a previous research study that was titled Funding Elder Care. Perhaps contextualize for us, the motivation behind the study, and also how it then talks back to the previous one that was titled Funding Elder Care.
Sure, I can do that. Just to say, we are the family caregiving of older persons program in Southern Africa. And so what we are really looking at more broadly is how can we understand family care of older persons? It's the most dominant form of care that in looking after older persons. So what we did, we went around different provinces and in different communities in the different provinces and started to listen to what older persons and their caregivers had to say. And in that process, we could hear that there were very few services, there weren't enough social workers, there weren't enough home-based carers, it was difficult to get transport to the clinic, etc. All of this was expensive. So we began to hear some of the utterances, the experiences, the challenges of just doing family care from both caregivers and older persons and other providers too. So that was what happened on the one hand. On the other hand, we were also talking with various providers of care services, such as TAFTA or NOAA and other MPOs that run such services that are largely subsidized by DSD. And what we're hearing from them was that they're losing their funds. Every year, there's the reductions in their funding. It means they have to either fundraise more or cut back on services. And then this isn't just an effect of COVID, but this has been happening over time. So it led us to ask 2 or 3 questions. The first one was, how do we understand what services are available to older persons? What does the state, do? In which departments and in what ways? And how has that changed over time? And that's the funding report that you are referring to. And what we found in that report, if I may, is that we found that over the last 18 years, since the introduction of the older persons legislation in 2006, there had been a 13% decrease in service provision funding. What I mean by that is the older persons grant has been taking place. It increases in line with inflation every year, and as the number of older persons increases, obviously there are more grants given out because there are more older persons eligible, right? But the funding is also given to provinces to run care services, and they're largely residential care homes and what's called service centres. Service centres are places where older persons can gather, those that can get there or those that have a service centre in their area, and they have lunch clubs, they have health clubs and programs, social and cultural activities, etc. And that can be once a week, it can be twice a week, it can be 3 times a week, or what, It differs depending on which service centre. So the reduction in spending at a provincial level meant there were fewer service centres, fewer people were able to attend them, and the providers who were of those services, MPOs, were struggling to keep their doors open effectively. And so that meant that families actually were having to do more, because if there's less help in the community, you have to do more as a caregiver, right? You don't have any respite. Your older mother can't just pop out for the next 3 hours and attend this lunch club, for example, or meet with other older persons, etc. So that's what we did. We analysed the spending over 18-year period, and we saw there was a reduction. But we also saw where are the other forms of support going? So 98% of funding goes directly to the older person's grant. And the older person's grant is fantastic. We all know it does wonderful work. It improves poverty. But is it enough? Is the question. And so we wrote that second report that I think you're also referring to, in looking at the 100 families that we've worked with in South Africa, as I said, in different provinces, so in KZN, in the Western Cape, and in the Eastern Cape. How do they use that money? And what do those households actually look like? If you're a household of 6 people with no one else employed in the household, what is that, what is now 2,180 Rand? It wasn't at the time we were doing this, it was a little bit less. But how far does that stretch, basically, when there are fewer resources in the household? But even if there is someone in the household employed, and there's other resources in the household, how do people use that money? Do they use it for transport? Do they use it for food, electricity? We know the basic costs of living,
Yeah.
And so that's what we were doing in that report.
And does this, Eleanor, I mean, from what you're saying, I guess it then speaks to the point around, the other primary reasons perhaps, or even secondary reasons why the grant as it stands now, even though it's had a slight increase, still remains insufficient, because elderly people actually support more than just themselves with this money.
Yes, so that is definitely happening. The average household size is about 5+ persons for older persons. So all older persons' households on average have 5+ persons. In rural areas, that's higher. And so that money is stretched across the number of people who are in that house, depending on what other resources are in there. Now, we don't want to think of resources only as money. People are resources. So the older person is receiving help from, let's say, a 20-year-old daughter or a 30-year-old daughter or son, for example. There are multiple resources in that house. Money is just one. But money, we know, is essential for food security, for being able to access the clinic, if you need to get transport, particularly if you have mobility issues, let's say, or challenges. So whilst there are other resources and forms of support that are happening in that household, the income that's coming into that household is quite constrained. And in that regard, the OPG, the Older Persons Grant, is having to do a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah. Let's also talk around, we often see the discourse on social media around, so how do we then take the findings from, the ongoing studies such as the ones that you've conducted with your team? How do we then take that academic research and perhaps use it in a way that ultimately contributes to advancing the conversation forward and ultimately affects change in the lives of the subjects that are being monitored, or of which data is being extracted? What is the vision there? How do we enable that? How do we then bring academia and the research policies on the desk and onto the eyes of the right people to utilize them properly?
Sure. So there's a couple of things we can do. We obviously can start having conversations with government, which we already are doing, Department of Social Development, Treasury, for example, to say, look, we have this evidence. This is what's happening across different provinces in households. And with that, we need to think about, what are the priorities of government going forward? If we know the older person population is going to increase, which it will, by the way, in the next 20, 30 years, and will probably double, how are we supporting older persons going forward when we know there's going to be more? Can we still rely on the Older Person Grant? Yes, of course we can. But what other things can we do? So you have those dialogues, at this stage, so that you begin to work together, aligned with government's priorities, and you try to kind of gain more political will in investing in older person care. That's the one thing, and obviously that takes different shapes and sizes and all of that. The other thing you can do is you can see things that are happening on the ground. So you can see, for example, there is another grant, the Grant in Aid, that we are currently doing a lot of work on. And it is an existing grant structure, i.e. there is a process for applying, there's a mechanism, for not just applying but receiving. And so we were started to try and understand, well, why are people who we understand who could benefit from this are not applying? Or are they applying and not getting it? So we've, in the last couple of months, been investigating this a bit further. Now, that's a grant that is designed for someone who receives an older person grant and who has what's called, who's in need of regular attendance, i.e. has full-time care needs. And so many people are not aware of the grant, and many people can't access it because of the application process. It's quite clunky. You have to go, to SASA office, then you have to go to the clinic, and then you have to, it's not easy for someone who has full-time care needs to get out the door, let alone to do this, quite clunky process. And so we had various advocacy efforts that would, first of all, inform the families that we're working with, but not just the families we're working with, the communities where we're working with, and our other partners. So, for example, we would have conversations with our NPO partners to spread the word that this exists. This is how you apply for it in this specific area. And if you know older persons who have significant care needs, for example, or full-time care needs, they need to be applying for it, and we need to help how one does that. So those activities are moving away from just having pure research findings to saying, look, there are mechanisms in the community or like in this system that are already existing, but just need more information, better implementation, etc. And we're currently attending to that.
Awesome. I want to just pause here for a second with our conversation. I'm just looking at the time, and perhaps we come back on the other side of the headline news, and I steal 5 minutes more of your time, because then I want us to chat around, some of the findings from your tracking, the people that you work with in your community. And there's been a significant underspend on food and basic necessities by households that are dependent on these grants. And I want to find out what maybe other areas have been neglected, and perhaps if there are ways of bolstering various sorts of support, in order to just focus the grant funding on where it's supposed to go, and then provide those other areas of support for the elderly and the communities in which they live. But let's hold that thought as Madupi does the headline news, and then we'll come back on the other side.
Thank you very much, Sister Bridge, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines at 1:30, the Judicial Services Commission has resolved to go ahead with its October sitting despite the MK Party's threat of legal action and demonstrations. The Weather Service says the recent snowfall in parts of KZN, the Free State and the Eastern Cape is not a rare occurrence at this time of the year. And tens of thousands of dock workers have gone on strike indefinitely at ports across the U.S. over wages. Those are your headlines. A full news update in your news, 2 o'clock.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
I think regarding the persistent snowfalls, right? Yes, and you've heard people from those regions talk about they are familiar with scenes of snow in those particular areas of the country. I think what's not communicated is how people deal with snow, and you saw people talking about the roofs collapsing because the snowfall was ultimately melting on the roofs. And I think, I guess if maybe we communicated around maybe what do we do? How do we get up on the roof, shovel the snow off, and do all those things so that we can safeguard against any damage to properties and things like that as we move into future years of us having to deal with snowfall at that magnitude in the country or in those specific regions of the country. That thought just popping up because of Madupi's headline news. We're still in conversation with Professor Eleanor Moore, who's with the Sociology Department at the University of Cape Town. And we're talking around some work that they've done looking at the elder persons grants. And Prof. Eleanor, I just want to, focus a little bit of time on, you've highlighted that there's a significant underspend on food and basic necessities by households that are dependent on the older person's grant. But what other areas of life perhaps are being neglected that should be tended to, and what would, on one part, the long-term consequences be for sort of neglecting and taking focus off that for families and the elderly, but also what kind of systems can we then put in place into communities that could tend to those needs that are ultimately being tended to with the elder person's grant money?
Sure. Well, firstly, the underspend on food is very worrying. Older persons are, having to sacrifice meals, skip meals, have less food, based on the resources in the household and the inability to meet the rising cost of food. We all know the rising cost of food. And so what we saw in the different communities we were working with, we saw that in communities that did have service centres, the ones I mentioned earlier, that actually food was heavily subsidized. You could go along, attend the social club, have a lunch, but you also could buy a lunch or another meal for later on that day for a highly subsidized price. That was, let's say, 10 Rand, for example, for a really large meal. And so those particular food programs that either operate through a service center, but also through maybe a religious organization or some other community organization are critical. Now, in one or two of our sites, we have really good citizens providing that service, informally, and that they're running, informal food programs essentially. And they are critical. They need to be supported. They need to be supported by Checkers, by ShopRite, and they are trying to, get those connections and those relationships going. But it's really difficult work. So we those are the kinds of things we can be doing at a local level, is making and supporting the work in making sure food is available through the different sites that we have in communities, whether it's the churches, the religious organizations or community halls, and just good citizen activities. The other thing with regards to transport costs, that was a huge cost. The older person may have to dip into almost half the 2,000 Rand if they had mobility issues and needed private transport. If you have to go to some people had to go more regularly than every 6 weeks. They had to go monthly. They might even have to go every 2 weeks because they have a particular condition. And so those costs were eating up, needless to say, the whole entire grant. So what we would advocate for, and it is available sometimes in Cape Town, albeit, the service isn't always, how should I say, readily available. It's, a dial-a-ride. So a service that allows people to access the clinic, SASA, all the other services at a much subsidized cost or almost for free. So there could be individuals. Now, this is happening in our communities. We do have, taxis or informal taxis offering affordable lifts to the clinic or to SASA or to the shops, ShopRite, for example, at maybe 20 Rand, 30 Rand. But that all adds up. And particularly for those that have mobility issues, there needs to be a kind of a level of respect and dignity in providing that services, so people are enabled to live out their lives and access the clinic in ways. The danger of if they don't is they obviously, may not adhere to their medication, may not get the regular checkups, and that can have serious consequences. The other huge issue is around electricity, which I know is probably very familiar for everyone who's listening, and the cost of electricity and the rising cost. And it's, the ways in which it isn't linked to either inflation, it's just off the scale. Yeah. And so an extra subsidy, we have to think about what that means for an older person who's not turning on lights to try and save money, or not using, a kettle to try and cut back on the costs, has really dire consequences for taking cooking, for example, taking food and then not taking medication, or just actually storing insulin when it's very hot, for example, or using your, nebulizer and the like. So there's the kinds of things we need to try and attend to. The other thing, that we would hope for is to have versions of respite care in the community where active older persons, or individuals in the community would attend to the care needs of older persons, their neighbours, their community members who they may be, very familiar with and friends with, to allow caregivers, a little bit of time off. That can obviously be done informally, but we would push for this to be done more formally and through recognised means. And they're the ways in which we can make family caregiving of older persons more sustainable. Caregivers are exhausted, as I'm sure you're well aware, and the listeners are well aware. They need a break. They need time off. This isn't about going on holidays. This is literally just, having a bit of a distance and a chance to just breathe and rest, literally to rest. And so we have to facilitate that in multiple ways. Yes, we can look to the state and try and find ways of pushing the state to support that through, various employment programs, the extended works program, for example. But there are probably other ways in the community that we can do that. And I say it informally. I don't mean that's without pay or without recognition, but there are other ways that can happen. And also just providing support networks. So in one community that we worked with, in coming together and having a community meeting with older persons and multiple different types of caregivers, we actually saw that this was the first time that people in the community where different family caregivers met each other. They didn't know each other. And so they started up a WhatsApp group and they started sharing information about everything from how to transfer your mother, in and out of bed, to where can I get a wheelchair because mine's currently, broken, or whatever it might be. All the different forms of information that one needs when one's looking after an older person.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what you've the list that you've just run through now speaks quite accurately to perhaps some of the policy considerations moving forward, as well as maybe even some of the more pressing, urgent future planning that needs to take place.
Yes, completely. I mean, we outlined the kinds of changes that could be done quite quickly without a major financial cost. Things like, and I know this is the amendments to the Older Persons Act do include kind of these forms of ideas around, older persons shouldn't have to queue at a clinic or a SASA office. There may be special days in which they could attend such. Those things are kind of in motion. Whether they're happening at every single clinic is not probably was happening, but at least the policies and the ideas are there, and it's about implementing them now. Absolutely. So there are things that can happen quite quickly. When I say quite quickly, without much effort, if we're all on board, and if we all in all our buildings and all our ways of life, whether you're working or whether you're at your children's school, is to be always cognizant of the needs of an older person in that particular space, and to be foregrounding that in how that service or that that institution or whatever it may be, in how it's operating.
Absolutely. Professor Eleanor Moore, we appreciate the time with you today. And Prof is with the Sociology Department at the University of Cape Town. It's approaching 2 o'clock on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. Let's take a quick pause here and then we'll come back and we'll touch base with the folks from the Eastern Cape Provincial Book Fair.
The wait is finally over, and we can safely say that Tropica Island of Treasure is back to serve you some really great entertainment. Tune into S3 from the 28th of September to cheer on the 7 teams who will be vying to win a shared prize of 1 million rand, a brand new car each, and become the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure Season 11. Fancy 50,000 bucks? Predict the champions of Tropica Island of Treasure and you might be sipping that cold, refreshing Tropica all the way to the bank. Follow at MyTropica and at SABC3 for more information. Channel your inner champion with Tropica Island of Treasure starts Saturday the 28th of September at 6:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3. Becoming Elizabeth is the fascinating story of the early life of England's most iconic queen. With no clear heir, the death of King Henry VIII sets into motion a dangerous scramble for power. Elizabeth's fascinating and factual journey to secure the crown is filled with scheming, betrayal, and illicit relationships that threaten to bring forth her demise. At a time in which every man or woman of the court is on the wheel of fortune, which may take them to a position of great power one moment, or the executioner's block the next. Channel your inner royalty with Becoming Elizabeth, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
As we get into our next conversation now, so the second edition of the Eastern Cape Provincial Book Fair is set to get underway at Buffalo City, and it's going to be happening this coming weekend, the 4th and 5th of October. We got joining us the Director for Languages and Literature in the Department of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture in the Eastern Cape, Busi Jemsana Mantashe. How are you doing this afternoon?
Good afternoon, Bridge. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. Hey, we're about to host the second edition of the Eastern Cape Provincial Book Fair. So the mood generally in the province is very jovial. How are you, Bridge?
I'm lovely. I love it. I love it, Busi. I love it for the province. I love it for you guys. So it's the second edition of the Eastern Cape Provincial Book Fair. I think every province deserves a book fair, especially with what we're trying to do with literature engagement in the country. Set us up for how we got here. What was the motivation behind the province's Department of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture actually backing a book fair to begin with?
So the province supports writers in the province through hosting writing workshops, but also through publishing their manuscripts for them. because many of our authors come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and you know the cost of publishing a book. For many who have manuscripts and have no way of publishing them, the department then comes in to support. But then he then said to say, where do we then place these books and have a platform where our authors are able to sell and exhibit their work, but also begin to have a conversation on how do we then get industry lives to be under one roof to talk about the entire value chain. Because, Bridge, some of them just write books, but in terms of really exploiting and making a business of those books, that's a whole discussion altogether. So we're trying to get writers from manuscript up until the shelves and up until they're able to buy or sell their books, get them into bookstores, traditional ways of selling their books, but also the modern ways of selling their books, equip them with the necessary information. And I think that's the thinking behind the provincial book fair.
I mean, I love it because it speaks to an holistic approach, right? We're not just setting you up for a 2-day event, but we actually are walking the journey with you as a writer or, somebody who's aspirant in the space.
Correct. Because it's one thing to then publish your book, but where do you sell your book? It's one thing to also support them publish their books, but you would want, when we've supported an author, to come on SAFM and talk about their book and have platforms where they can say, if you're in Joburg, you can go to Store A to get the copy of my book. But if you don't have that and you are stuck with your manuscript, then that support that we have given you is a failed investment, because then you're not making money out of your books. But also you then need to have your legendary writers who have walked the walk, who have had the experiences of not owning copyrights to their books. I mean, you write a book and then, yes, down the line you don't have copyright to it, you can't make copies of it, you can't resell the book. So you need to, as you get into the industry, be equipped with that information, so that whether you decide to self-publish or you decide to go the route of having publishers publishing your book, but you are well informed of the pros and the cons. And that is why we've invited Jacana Media. We've also invited, excitingly, Bridge, to just confirmed the legendary Zakes Mda to be part of the list of renowned writers that we're having at the book fair, but also get them to be in conversation with the emerging writers, talk about issues that are affecting the literary space, talk about the industry itself, where if you publish your book and then the publisher says, we'll take 80 rands for editing and reviewing, we'll take another 20 rands for this and that, and as a writer you end up with 10 rands. What do you do? Which is where then the support from government comes in to say, we want to partner with you, we'll get you published, we'll get you in bookstores, but we want at the end of the day for you to enjoy the fruits of your work.
Absolutely. And I think, Busi, when we talk about the business of books, also, it's about looking at the future landscape of the publishing industry, right? Because these days we see books being morphed into films, being morphed into series, and there's so many ways for writers to then exploit their works outside of them just living on the shelves of a bookstore. And I figure all that becomes part and parcel of some of the workshops and the dialogues that are in bed for the next 2 days.
Indeed, Bridge. And fortunately for us as the provincial government, we have EPIC as our entity that deals with film, and we've wrote them in to say some of these books are novels, some of them are drama, and some of them really need a step further in terms of what we make of this production. For all we know, we've got an award-winning film that encompasses, that is from that book. So we need you on board so that the books that we publish, we get really to put them and see, where does this one belong? You have Nalibali, you have SAFM that do story reading. Storylines that talk about the livings and the daily lives of our people, storylines that talk about the challenges that people are facing, storylines that need to be on SAFM, that need to be on TV. How do we distribute these effectively so that they are not only bestsellers, but they are best support in the issues or challenges that are facing our communities. We've also involved the SABC. We had a program that ran with them in terms of their drama, Umhlobo Wenene, where we took some of these authors or their books and they were read there and they were part of the drama series that takes place. So we're looking really at the number of platforms and options we can avail for our authors in the province.
Wonderful. And Busi, let me ask you this. Because it is a book fair that's set in the Eastern Cape, I'm presuming and assuming that the bias of the literary works and the authors that are going to be invited to participate skews itself to more indigenous languages, Xhosa, etc., etc.
Indeed, I think one of the major challenges that we're experiencing as a province and I think as a country at large, Bridge, is the promotion or is the dominance of English as an official language at the expense of other languages. So in the broader scale of things, we're looking at how do we promote multilingualism to ensure that writers write in their own languages. I mean, we made a call in May, June, where we said writers must submit manuscripts, and we received about 43 in English and 44 in isiXhosa, and sadly received, I think, about 4 in Sesotho, and I think about 4 again in Afrikaans. Those are indigenous languages, and it's not to say that there were no Afrikaans speaking authors that submitted manuscripts.
Yeah.
They just chose to write in English. And so if we are going to have trends that are in that nature, it means we're to see the demise of our indigenous languages, our African languages. But perhaps, Bridge, the broader conversation would be, is there a demand? How to make a demand? You come to the Eastern Cape and go to a bookstore here. You'll be very lucky to find 2 books that are written in isiXhosa in a province that is dominantly isiXhosa speaking. And so we that is why we then said this book fair cannot be only about authors emerging and the renowned. We need to get the bookstores involved, the distributors and the publishers, so that we force them to acknowledge and recognize African literature in a country that is African, in an African country like ours, and in provinces that have indigenous languages. So we need to start that conversation. And I think more so because government is the one that has libraries, is the one that has the Department of Education where curriculum is taught. And so as government, I think we're at a point where we really want to force the industry because it is very dominated, it is very enclosed. So how do we open that door for African literature? Because I don't want to believe, Bridge, that we don't want to read stories in our own languages. I don't want to believe that writers don't want to write in their own languages. But where do they sell these books? Where do they find these books after they have written them? So we need to begin to have those conversations and be at a point where we are able to say, this is the difference that we have seen through the book fair, and we really want to grow it to the most loved book fairs in the country. And we are certain that with the writers that we have invited and the conversations that are going to be happening, because we've also invited Professor Somadoda Fikeni, Oyama Mabandla, to discuss the political landscape of the country. And I know there's a national dialogue that is being planned. But before we get there, surely in our own corners, we must begin to engage on issues that are affecting us in our provinces and in our communities.
I mean, listen, Busi, it sounds like it's a well thought out, well put together program, and we wish you guys the very best for the second edition of the Eastern Cape Provincial Book Fair. That was Busi Jimsana Mantashe, who's the Director for Languages and Literature in the Department of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture. So it's happening 4th and 5th of October at Buffalo City in East London.
Okay. They actually did it. I mean, I've seen it done in other countries, but now they have a whole new local season of the show. Oh, Mzansi, you beautiful, amazing land with diverse families and cultures. Wife Swap South Africa is finally here. Tune in from Monday the 9th of September and see how families from across South Africa swap wives and learn a thing or two or three on how other families operate. There will be disruptions, lessons learned, tears, and smiles in this unique and insightful social experiment. Channel your best entertainment with Wife Swap, Mondays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up. Back-to-back champions, the Buccaneers are only interested in lifting up their third consecutive title. Meanwhile, Maroon and Gold, Stellies want to ensure that black and white fans go to bed early. This is the MTN 8 final. Wafa Wafa. Catch the reigning champs Orlando Pirates up against Stellenbosch FC on Saturday 5 October at 5:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
You know, I always end up chasing the clock on the show. I don't know why. I think we love to talk on this station. Dalen Oliver joins me now. He's an award-winning South African comedian, and he's returning home after a whirlwind 6-country, 13-city tour across Europe and the UK, and is gearing up for a one-man show called 90 Day Comedian. How are you doing, Dalen? You good?
Bridget, happy Tuesday. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Always good. I hope you all too.
I'm great. Thank you. I'm so fantastic. Okay, first and foremost, I know we're running out of time, but how was Europe and the UK? How did the tours go?
The tours are fantastic. The people came out to support, which was great. England was cold. Ireland was colder, but the audiences were warm. They were fantastic in terms of the reception. The expats came out, but there was a mix of audiences from all over. The show appeals to everybody, which is very important to me. And I'm not just saying this. It's always good to be home. South Africa's got the best people, the best audiences, and we've got that X factor, that flavor that the world lacks.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So when we come back to the flavor, the trifle, it's just a mixture of everything, all the cultures, the race, the religions. We're like, it's delicious. The world can learn from us.
Oh, no, that's a fact. That's a fact. I love to hear that, you know, your material, and I'm then just going to assume as well that just comedy has a way of exporting itself to different people in different cultures. It's not just about the expats coming back because they know that Dalen's in town and they want that little touch point with South Africa, but you're appealing to a broader, sort of a broader audience.
100%. You're in the arts and entertainment, so you'll know firsthand that our stories, first of all, as South Africans, are filled with so much texture, so much nuances, so much identity politics and cultural politics that the world won't understand. So when we travel, we're ambassadors for the country, and if we can give the world a window into how amazing it is to be South African, it's the best part, because the expats come and they quickly realize that, okay, we're not going to be doing all the language-isms or the slang-isms, but in that same breath, by telling people that South Africans are in your life genuinely to burst your bubble, because I feel like the UK and Europe live in this beautiful oat milk, gluten-free, protected bubble of life, and we're there to give them the realities of going, hey, don't always walk with your phone out in the middle of the night. Someone could rob you. You know what I mean? I was chilling with my one friend in the UK and he was complaining about the trains being late. I'm like, listen, I'm not stereotyping about my country, but sometimes our trains don't arrive because they're burning, right? And no announcement is made. Like, someone would just tell you, oh, the train's burning a few stations down. And we move on and we're resilient and we figure out what the next way is and the next step. There's no time to write the email and complain because life must happen. Whereas in the bubble of the first world, which I hate using and I don't use, because someone told me, this is the first world. I said, we are the first world. We have everything and more that you guys have. Remember that. We have better natural beauty. We have better man-made beauty.
Yep.
The only difference is back in South Africa, it's a suggestion at times. That's the only difference. You guys have pedestrian. We have pedestrian crossings. We don't always use them. We walk across in the middle of the road to get there quicker. Okay.
So cheeky.
So that's important. Yeah.
So the show is a 90-day comedian, and it's a one-man show. And you're going to be making a few stops at home, right? So you're hitting literally almost every place, because you're in Joburg, Durban, Paarl, East London, Gqeberha, and Cape Town from today until the 30th of November. So where's the first show kicking off today?
So I kick off at the Theatre on the Square. It's at Nelson Mandela Square in
Sandton.
Sandton. Yep, show starts at 7:30, and I've got 2 shows on Saturday, 4 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. I'll be traveling to the cities that you mentioned, and then next year we'll extend into Pietermaritzburg, Pretoria, Kimberley, Bloem, but to the Garden Route as well, and just to perform the show in as many spaces and places as possible, as at the Arts Fest in Makanda in July. The show won a bronze Standard Bank Ovation Award, which was really cool. Because I'm proud of this body of work, because it really reflects the positive space that we're in as South Africans. Post 30 years of democracy, everybody's going, if we can play our part, we're going to be the best country in the world. Yes, we have our issues, but let's figure it out together.
Absolutely. I don't know how I missed you in Makanda, but I'll definitely make up for it during this incredible tour. Just quickly, the 90-day comedian, I know there's that whole movement around 90-day what. I'm probably the only person in the world that has not watched that show. So I don't know.
The reason for the name.
Yes.
Bridget, do you know what, This is the worst. I always laugh and go, I wish I could change my name. I was telling my wife last night, if I could change the name of the show, I'd change it to Pavement Special. I tell you why. Because South Africans are the pavement specials of the world. We're so mixed and we're so amazing. You know that pavement special that lives forever in the hood? That dog doesn't die. That dog's resilient and successful, right? That's who we are. And the reason I called it 90-Day Comedian is because I applied for a festival, Melbourne Fringe, in March 2023. It was in September 2023 when the festival was happening, and I needed a show title, and I didn't have one. And the Aussies gave me a 90-day working visa. And then I said, okay, cool, I've got 3 months to tell jokes. If I'm not funny, they'll chuck me out, or someone needs to adopt me. So that's the reason. Yeah, that was 90-Day Comedian, and now it's here. But I still like Pavement Special more because...
Listen, I'll take it either way.
Thank you.
Dalen Oliver, thank you so much for the time. So today we kick off at the Theatre on the Square, the Nelson Mandela Square tonight. For those who can still maybe secure a ticket, you might be able maybe to sneak in 1 or 2. And then Durban, Paarl, East London, Gqeberha, and Cape Town. Your turn is coming up once Dalen is done with us come the end of this weekend. The tour is wrapping up on the 30th of November, and you can go for bookings to dalenoliver.com is where you go to get your ticket bookings. Tickets are priced between 150 and 200 Rand, and the show runs for just under 2 hours, like an hour and a half of fabulous giggles and laughs. We appreciate the time. It's 2 o'clock. Madupi standing by.
Thanks, Sister Bridge. The top stories this hour. The Premier says mass murder suspects will be arrested and the JSC sitting to go ahead as planned. A very good afternoon. Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane has assured the residents of Lusikisiki that the perpetrators of the mass murder that took place at Ngobazana village will be brought to book. Mabuyane, together with Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, are in the area to visit the victims' families. They will also address a community meeting later this afternoon. 17 people were gunned down while sleeping at the village as they prepared for a traditional ceremony over the weekend. One of the injured 6 died later in hospital. Mabuyane has also promised that the government will assist the families.
We can't continue coexisting with criminality at this level. Well, we are here today to also continue making our presence felt, but also strengthening the police work that is being done, but also continue with our awareness programs post this incident, We'll be meeting with families. Part of that is to plan and prepare how do we move forward with families. Government will be coming on board to assist, but that is a very sensitive issue that we would want to discuss with families properly.
The Judicial Services Commission has resolved to go ahead with its October sitting despite the MK Party's threat of legal action and demonstrations. The JSC held an urgent virtual meeting yesterday after it received a letter from the MK Party lawyers seeking a postponement of the sitting from the 7th to the 11th of this month. The request follows an interim interdict granted by the Western Cape High Court, halting Dr. John Klope from participating in the sitting pending a review of his designation to the JSC. Kenny Mapanga reports.
Attorneys on behalf of the MK Party contended that the effect of the interdict renders the JSC improperly constituted. JSC Chairperson, Chief Justice of the Republic of South Africa, Mandisa Maya, however, in a response to the MK dated Tuesday, the 1st of October 2024, noted that the judgment of the Western Cape High Court does not impact the composition of the JSC, and therefore the Commission remains lawfully composed. Kenny Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Lesotho Water Transfer Tunnel has officially been shut down for a planned 6 months maintenance. The tunnel corrosion protection process is done every 5 years and is expected to protect the infrastructure for another 20 to 30 years. The maintenance project is critical for ensuring the integrity of the water tunnel systems, which supply 60% of Gauteng's water demand. The Lesotho Highland Project's Rientseng Molapo says this is a complex process.
Every day of the year, we are continuously transferring water. So this time around 30th of September, midnight, we are shutting down. No more deliveries. From that time on, we open the valves to take the water out of the tunnels now. It will take about 2 weeks to 3 weeks to take that water out of the tunnels. It has to be taken in a controlled, slow fashion because you want to allow the tunnel to still maintain its integrity. It has to feel as though there is still water inside.
The Weather Service says the recent snowfall is not a rare occurrence at this time of the year. Last week's snowfall affected parts of KZN, the Free State and the Eastern Cape. It led to extreme cold weather where one person died and caused massive traffic jams due to the closure of major highways. The Weather Service's Dr. Christine Engelbrecht briefed the media in Pretoria.
It is not rare. However, snow in October is not that frequent. For example, in 21 September 2008, road closures occurred in the provinces of KwaZulu-Natal and the Eastern Cape due to snowfall and accidents that occurred due to the conditions of the roads because of the snowfall. I think this recent event, it coincided with a long weekend, but I must say that therefore the snow is more or less in some areas on the M3 up to 80 centimeters of snow.
And tens of thousands of dock workers have gone on strike indefinitely at ports across the U.S. over wages. The action threatens significant trade and economic disruption ahead of the presidential election and the busy holiday shopping season. Members of the International Longshore Men's Association, ILA, have walked out at 14 major ports along the East and Gulf coasts. The action marks the first such shutdown in almost 50 years. Dock worker Daniel Amelie says the union will continue to fight for a fair deal.
Employers push automation under the guise of safety, but it is really about cutting labor costs to increase their already exceptionally high profits. Automation of our nation's ports should be a concern for everyone. The truth is, robots do not pay taxes, they do not spend money in their communities. The ILA would continue to fight until its members receive the fair contract they deserve.
The top story at 2 o'clock, Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane has assured residents of Lusikisiki that the perpetrators of the mass murder that took place at Ngobozana village will be brought to book. The Full Circle continues. For SAFM News, Kimudupi Makhalemeli.
Becoming Elizabeth is the fascinating story of the early life of England's most iconic queen. With no clear heir, the death of King Henry VIII sets into motion a dangerous scramble for power. Elizabeth's fascinating and factual journey to secure the crown is filled with scheming, betrayal, and illicit relationships that threaten to bring forth her demise. At a time in which every man or woman of the court is on the wheel of fortune, which may take them to a position of great power one moment, or the executioner's block the next. Channel your inner royalty with Becoming Elizabeth, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Kwindawo inhliziyo wayenzutiko yafihlakala kwindawo inhliziyo wayenzutiko yafihlakala angekuzazi incinga zomuntu nendlela zakhe zaziwa nguye angekuzazi incinga zomuntu nendlela zakhe ahamba ngazo kanti seche wena owakho uhamba kanjani kanti seche wena owakho uhamba kanjani inhliziyo dingekalali kobubuthongo undihlambe ezonweni dingekalali kobubuthongo angekuzazi incinga zomuntu nendlela zakhe zaziwa nguye angekuzazi incinga zomuntu nendlela zakhe ahamba ngazo kanti seche wena owakho uhamba kanjani oh yafihlakala.
That is how we kicking off the second hour of the show. Nati coming through with Inhliziyo. Beautiful song. Beautiful, beautiful song. I hope you're having a good day, by the way. It was rather cold today, right? It was, yeah, and it was exceptionally cold in the morning. I think, though, by the time the show started, midday-esque, the wind was dying down on our side. Like there was that crisp, cold wind, and it was getting a little bit warmer. But I wonder if later on in the day, when the sun starts to set, if then the temperature is going to drop even more. And I think obviously we are feeling the effects, I'm assuming, of what's now happening in KZN. There was that anticipation by the SA Weather Services that there was that anticipation that the temperatures would drop to quite low temperatures in parts of KZN. I missed the briefing, though, this morning. They had a 10 o'clock briefing, and I missed it. So I'm not too sure to what is the latest update in as far as that is concerned. Right now, though, we're going to get into a health and wellness conversation. October is a breast cancer awareness month, and there's been an alarming rise in the diagnosis of breast cancer in younger females. And we'll unpack that a little bit more. Females under the age of 40. And apparently that this trend now mirrors global patterns. So I wonder what has changed, whether in environment or lifestyle. It's just the factors that speak to breast cancer. But let's take a quick pause and then we'll come back and we'll get into that conversation.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
We are in conversation now with Dr. Peter Shube, who's the chair of the Breast Imaging Society of South Africa. And like I said, there's been an increase in diagnosis amongst younger females under 40 years old. And Dr. Shube is going to unpack some of those trends for us and some of the factors as well. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Peter. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. Thank you. Very well.
Thank you so much for the time. So the most prevalent cancer among South African women is breast cancer, from what I read. And now there's an increase in its detection in females under the age of 40. What does that speak to, or what does that tell us?
Yeah, so exactly. Breast cancer is the most common cancer in women in South Africa, as it is elsewhere in the world. And it's also the leading cause of cancer death in women in South Africa. What we are seeing is an increase in the younger patients presenting with breast cancer. Now, it's important to clarify that breast cancer still is much more common as you get older. Okay. So the kind of peak age that we're seeing it is around about 55. Mm-hmm. And the older you get, the more common it becomes. Okay. However, what we are seeing an increase is the young women between 30 and 40 who are coming in often with highly aggressive cancers, meaning that the cancer grows very, very fast. Mm. And that's obviously a very worrying trend because more aggressive cancers are harder to treat. Often when a person comes in, it's quite late already. Mm. So I think despite the fact that breast cancer is much more common in older women, we want to this year just shine a spotlight on the younger women and most importantly, get the message out there that every woman, even from the age of 20, needs to be aware that it can happen to them. And if there is anything that they notice different in a breast, whether it's feeling something or seeing something, that they need to have it checked out. Mm. So I think that's really our message for this October.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about, and please pardon my lack of knowledge in this space, right? But talk to us about when research shows that younger women are being diagnosed with more aggressive forms of breast cancer. Unpack that for us a little bit so we understand that a little bit more.
Sure. So there are many different types of breast cancer. It's not just one type.
Okay.
Some breast cancers are sensitive to your hormones like estrogen and progesterone, and some cancers have no hormone receptors, and those are often called triple-negative cancers. And the triple-negative cancers tend to be the more fast-growing ones, and not just do they grow faster, but they also spread earlier, and really the spreading to the other organs in the body, like the brain and the liver and the lungs, that's what kills people. So if you have a very fast-growing cancer, it's more likely by the time you walk in the door that it's already spread elsewhere.
Oh, wow.
The hormone type of breast cancers, which are the more common type, those are the ones that often grow more slowly. And those we generally pick up in older patients.
Okay.
So that's really what we are looking at.
I see. I mean, I guess for lack of a better word, the kind of information that we really need to know. And let's also talk around maybe some of the factors. And I know discourse amongst those of us who've not been affected or diagnosed with any kind of cancer might be very off the mark. But let's talk about maybe some of the factors that are at play, that lead to a cancer diagnosis. How much of what does science say around environmental factors? What does science say around genetic factors, even life and life choices, perhaps?
Yes. So I think the important thing to say at the outset is that we don't know what causes breast cancer. We do know that there are some risk factors. So, for example, if you have a family history, let's say that your mother or your sister had breast cancer, then there is a higher chance that you would have it. And tied into that are the genetic abnormalities. So in some families, there's a genetic mutation which puts a person at a much higher risk of breast cancer. There are some other things. For example, if a woman has very dense breast tissue, that means very thick tissue, they're at a higher risk of cancer. If they've had an abnormal biopsy before, then the risk is increased. In terms of environmental or lifestyle, we do think that smokers and people who abuse alcohol are at a slightly higher risk. We do know that women who are obese or very overweight are also at a higher risk. So those are things that can be changed. But the reality is that in at least 70% of breast cancer diagnoses, there are no known risk factors at all. So for the vast majority of women, no one in their family has had a breast cancer. And the point is, we can't prevent it. Really, it's all about early detection. Because the earlier that we catch a cancer, the easier it is to treat. And the majority of the breast cancers we see these days, certainly in women who do their regular mammogram screening, are stage 1 or 2, meaning very early. And those are almost entirely treatable.
Okay. And I know, by and large, when we have a conversation in October around Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we do focus a lot on females. But I just want to quickly remind our male listeners that they too can be affected and diagnosed with breast cancer. Not as frequently from what I understand, if we're looking at data, as women, but there is a chance.
Yes, absolutely true. So men do get breast cancer. It tends to happen at a slightly later age than in women. So in men, it's usually older than 55, 60s. So, if a young man has a lump, it's almost never a cancer. Although it's important that any lump in the breast, whether you are a man or a woman, should always be checked out. But as you also pointed out, it is much less common. In fact, it's quite rare. The estimate is that for every 100 cancers in women, there's one in men. So that's the reason why we don't recommend regular screening for men. But again, the message is that if as a male you feel something in the breast, you feel a little lump, or you see some changes, something feels different, you come straight away to your doctor or X-ray department and let us check it.
Absolutely. Now, every Tuesday, if you listen to the show, and after 2 o'clock, we have our health and wellness focus, and we have experts like Dr. Peter Shub joining us. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on. If there's something maybe you want to clarify or get further understanding from the good doctor on, he can share some information with you, but he can't give you a diagnosis or prescription or any of that sort of stuff on air, but he can just relay some information and maybe guide you in the right direction of whose help you should be seeking, who you should be consulting. 061-410-4107 is our WhatsApp line, where you can also send through any question, or you can send us a voice note. A voice note is always better as well. So one of the biggest hurdles that I read is that in South Africa, late stage diagnosis still continues to be a problem for us.
Yes. So unfortunately, and I mean this is a reflection of the health system in general, the availability of mammogram services is really limited.
Dr. Peter?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
So the availability of mammograms and ultrasounds is very limited, and other than in private practice, generally these tests are only available at the larger academic hospitals, usually in the cities. And what that means is that a very large part of the population has no access to the kind of investigations that pick up breast cancer. So that's the one issue. The other is an education problem, in that there isn't enough awareness out there, and that often things like a lump in the breast are ignored. It's not appreciated how serious it could be, and by the time that the woman comes into the hospital, it's quite advanced. So in the public sector, we are unfortunately still seeing a lot of late-stage cancers. In private, and certainly for women who do regular screening, usually the cancers are very early stage, and that unfortunate, that is unfortunately the kind of state of play and what we're still facing. I think the first step really is to try and promote the message, the awareness of breast cancer, and the fact that if you have a lump, that you should at least go to your clinic, let your sister examine you, go to your house doctor, just get help. And, if you can have a mammogram, great. But if you notice something new in the breast, just to go and get it looked at.
Yeah. Can we take this moment as well? By the way, our lines are open. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on, or 061 410 4107. We're talking around breast cancer awareness with Dr. Peter Shub, who's the chair of the Breast Imaging Society of South Africa. So if you have something that perhaps you'd like to contribute or share your experience or find out a little bit more information conversation as to some of the resources that might be available for you to look into. Maybe Dr. Shub is well placed to give you that necessary information. Can we have a conversation around also the self-exam? Because, we attend a lot of Women's Month events and a lot of October month events. And oftentimes survivors of breast cancer in particular will talk around how the lump was first detected by their partners. I understand why. The lump was first detected by their partners. But it also in part speaks to the fact that even we as women, as much as we have these conversations, we're still not self-examining, or maybe if we are, we're just not doing it correctly. And because our partners are always at play within our breast region, they get to have a proper examination of what's going on there. But we as women, maybe we need to be reminded, how do we go about doing a self-exam?
Yeah, absolutely. The reality is that most women don't do self-examination, and they don't know how their breasts actually feel. And because of that, and the fact that breasts naturally feel lumpy, it's quite difficult for anyone, unless they're really an expert, to pick up certainly the small lumps and changes. What we find is that a lot of the time when a lump is picked up, as you say, it's sometimes a partner or maybe your doctor examining you, but often if a woman picks it up herself, it's picked up incidentally. So maybe she's in the bath or the shower, or she's getting changed or rolls over in bed, and she suddenly feels something's different. And the message there is, if you feel something, then act on it.
Yeah.
In terms of self-examination, yes, it's great if you do it and you're confident to do it. It should ideally be done at least once a month. Should be done standing in front of a mirror, and the inspection, the looking is as important as the feeling.
Okay.
To see, are there any obvious differences between the breast? Does the nipple look different? Has it changed? Is the skin different? All of those things are important. And then the examination itself is generally done with your index and middle finger, with the tips of the finger, and you examine very carefully all four quadrants. If you divide the breast into four quadrants, and you feel, it would feel like a little knob, a little pea or grape under the skin. That's what you're feeling for.
Okay.
And if you're not sure, go and have someone professional check it out.
Awesome. I want to pause us there for a second. Oh, no, we're wrapping up our conversation. No, but I want to pause us quickly because there's a question on the other side. Let's take the headline news and then we'll come back.
Thanks, Bridget. A very good afternoon. With the news headlines this hour, Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane has assured residents of Lusikisiki that the perpetrators of the mass murder that took place at Ngobazana village will be brought to book. The Weather Service says rain can be expected in different parts of the country over the next few days, and the Israeli military has urged the residents of more than 20 towns in southern Lebanon to evacuate immediately as it continues what it says are limited localized raids across the Lebanese border. Those are your headlines. A full news update, 3 o'clock.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
086 000 2032 or 0614104107. The good Dr. Peter Shub is not going to be with us much longer. So if you want to quickly sneak in a question or an observation, this is your time to do so. We are talking all things breast cancer. Thor in Bloom, Dr. Shub, who's 50 oldish, he says, I'm a 50 oldish dude, a bit chubby with some breast-like outgrowths. No need to be shy. He put a shy emoji there. And then he says he's had some itchiness on the right breast. Would that be a cause for concern for a man? But I guess maybe one would need more information.
So, it's very common for men, especially if they are a little bit overweight, to have a bit of extra breast tissue, right? In other words, to have breasts or to have swellings in their breasts, and that is almost never a sign of cancer. Breast cancer, especially in men, tend to present as small, hard lumps. So if you have just a bit of swelling, or maybe you've got kind of a prominent breast, that usually is either just because you're overweight, or there's a condition called gynecomastia, which just means that there's swelling of the male breast. Certainly, if you're worried, it should be checked out, but it doesn't sound to me like that's worrying. In terms of the itchiness, also, I'm not really concerned. If there is an obvious change in the appearance of a nipple, so if the nipple is kind of dry and peeling or very red, that needs to be checked out. But if there isn't that, there's just a bit of itching, I'm not worried. And that goes for women and men.
Awesome stuff. And let's go to our voice notes as well, quickly.
Hey, good afternoon, good doctor. And I just want to find out if this lump cannot be confused with the infection. How are they different from the lumps that are caused by the infection? And the location, is it only on the where the breasts are, or they can be actually found everywhere in the body? Thank you.
Hi there, this is Kate from Howick. I've just got a question around implants. What kind of impact does having breast implants have on feeling and identifying lumps in the boobs? Is it harder, and is it the same process to have a mammogram? Thank you.
Awesome. Doc, let me hand it over to you.
Okay, so just the first question, I think, was how do you differentiate infection? Right, okay, so infection in the breasts, certainly in men, is almost unheard of. It's really uncommon. But it can happen in women, and it can present as an abscess, which is basically just a collection of pus in the breast. You might feel a lump there. You would see reddening of the skin. It would be sore. You might even have a fever. But essentially, it needs to be checked by a doctor, and it sometimes can be treated with antibiotics and sometimes needs to be drained. But it comes back to the point that any kind of swelling in the breast needs to be checked. As far as can you get lumps elsewhere, sure, you can get lumps, you can get cancers anywhere in the body, and any new lump should be checked out. So that, I think, is the first one. The second one, in terms of the implants, implants don't make it more difficult to feel lumps. In fact, if anything, they make it easier. And the reason is that the breast tissue is always in front of the implant, between the implant and the skin. And therefore, if there's a lump in there, it's not going to be behind the implant, it's going to be between the implant and the skin, and can usually be felt quite easily. And in the same way, on mammogram and on ultrasound, we can see the breast tissue very well, even if you have an implant. So, and those tests are not going to damage it. So certainly, even if you have those implants, you should have those checks.
Awesome stuff. All right. Kate and Howick, I hope that answers you. And then as we patch in Charlotte in the West Coast, I also wanted to find out, if you're streaming now, you can see me almost feeling my breast tissue myself. I wanted to find out, when one was a little bit younger, and admittedly, I also haven't done a breast self-exam in many years. I kind of rely on my annual gynecological visits. But when one was younger, you'd almost feel like a tiny... I just passed it off as glands, right? And you'd feel like a tiny little lump, and then it will just disappear. But then I kind of realized that, oh, wait a minute, you kind of have tiny little lumps that just pop up from time to time, even around the jaw, whatever. And I was just like, oh, it's glands. Are they common little lumpies that maybe, I think that's the question, are they common little lumpies that maybe pop in and out of your body? And that, you feel it today, it might be gone tomorrow, if it's not a persistent thing. but it's just a lump
Certainly.
that happens from time to time, once every however many years or months.
So, the glands, the breasts contain lots and lots of glands, and those glands swell depending on your hormone levels, and that changes throughout your cycle and throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very common that as your hormones change, that they cause swelling of these glands, and that you can feel some lumpiness that comes and goes. So that's a very common thing, and I think the message is that if you feel a lump that has grown and then disappears, it's almost certainly just a hormonal thing.
Okay.
The breast cancer is not going to disappear. It's only going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, it's very common to feel lumpiness that comes and goes, and not to worry about it.
All right. Charlotte in the West Coast, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
I'm great, thank you. Charlotte, my producers tell me that you are blind, but
Yes,
you are feeling. You can tell us the situation around the breast.
Yes, doctor. I'm a blind person, but lately, about a month ago, I feel that my right breast is very heavy, and it's swollen. But the nipple is not in, and it's so very, very sore. I squeeze it and nothing come out, but I don't know how it feels. That it's almost like there's blood that it can't go through my veins or something like that. I don't know what it is. It's so heavy and swollen and feverish. It's very hot.
Okay. So we mentioned earlier about infections in the breast, and I spoke about abscesses, which are small, like collections of pus. But you can also get a general infection of the breast called a mastitis, where the whole breast is swollen and heavy and red. And we see that most commonly in women who breastfeeding. That's very, very common, and it's because of the congestion of the milk. But occasionally we see it in older women, and possibly just on one side. However, there is also the possibility of an inflammatory cancer of the breast. And that means that there isn't just one little lump, but that the whole breast is involved, and it presents also with this big swollen red breast with very thickened skin. Now, I'm not suggesting that's what's the case here. It's most likely not that. But because that's a possibility, it needs to be checked out quite urgently. And even if it's an infection, it should be addressed as soon as possible.
Wonderful.
So I think, again, if you have access directly to mammography department, great. Otherwise, start with your GP or your clinic and let them refer you.
Awesome. Dr. Shub, I think that, was great information there for Charlotte. And Charlotte, we wish you the very best. But as Dr. Shub has re-emphasized throughout our conversation, do please get it checked out as well. Do just get it checked out so that you get a proper diagnosis with the doctor that's able to see you, inspect you, do all the necessary tests. And at least now you've got some information that hopefully has subdued some of the anxiety, and you're able to go to a doctor with more information, and even Google. Actually, don't Google. No, WebMDs. Don't Google. As our last question, someone just wanted to know, how often should one be getting a mammogram, especially if there's been a history of breast cancer in your family?
I'm very glad that question came up, because that is very much a part of what we are promoting and discussing this month, and that is screening mammography. So a mammogram, briefly, is just an X-ray of the breasts, and it is the best way to pick up an early cancer, because even though we've spoken a lot about feeling cancer, feeling a lump, it's not always possible to feel anything, and there could be something growing in the breast. Mammogram is a way for us to pick that up extremely early, even before it becomes a lump. And so we recommend that women go and have a mammogram on a regular basis from the age of 40.
Okay.
The best is every year, sometimes every 2 years. Just to say that almost all medical aids, regardless of what plan you're on, will cover a mammogram every 1 or 2 years.
Absolutely.
So if you're on a medical aid, really, it is your right, and you should do it on a regular basis because it could very well save your life.
Absolutely. And I think that is the poignant note for us to leave it on. Dr. Peter Shoup, thank you so much for your time today, as well as your calming spirits, in fact, and for all the information that you've shared with us. That was Dr. Peter Shoup. I hope you've got everything that is necessary for you if you were listening to us. As you keep saying, if there is something persistent there, then go check it out with the necessary medical professional. And of course, gift yourself those screenings. Gift yourself those screenings at least once a year. Go do. I know not everybody's on Discovery, so you're not trying to get your vitality points, but go do the screenings. You're just gifting yourself the gift of good life and good health. Let's take a pause and then we come back into Kids Corner.
Dawn breaks across the lush Serengeti plain, but paradise is fleeting as the animals face fresh challenges. Kali the lioness and Bakari the baboon may seem safe in their rock fortresses, but with rivals encroaching on all sides, their future hangs in the balance. Out on the plains, Duma the cheetah faces his destiny, and down by the river, baby hippo Mafuta strikes up an unlikely friendship with the crocodile Magamba. Channel your inner explorer with Serengeti Season 3, Sundays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Masanda Wana ladies want to rubber stamp their authority with maximum points to stay on the summit. The Copper Belt ladies want to fight with all they have to move away from the bottom half. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Witness the Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns Ladies FC versus Copperbelt Ladies FC on Saturday, 5 October at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available everywhere for everyone, always on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
My name is Libanzi Shangwane. Well, what I do to make sure that my ears are clean is that I clean them. Every single time when I'm bathing, I make sure to never, ever, ever miss my ears. I don't do an extreme cleaning for the ears because I don't have the correct equipment for that, and I'm not trying to damage my ears at all. It is very, very important to avoid putting objects in your ears because you don't know if they can get stuck there, and they could really mess your hearing up. I think some activities that can be harmful to your hearing could be very, very, very loud music or being in a very, very loud crowd, especially when, like, you, for example, you have like headphones on and your music is on full blast. I think the sounds that I like listening to are the sound of the rain. It's just very calming, it's just very soothing. I just think I like the sound of water, like the ocean. It just feels, I don't know, it just puts me in a serene state. I feel very calm, I feel very relaxed, and yeah, I like those sounds. I like some music, but also the music has to be specific. It also depends on the mood. If we're feeling like calm, neo-soul, then we put that on. But I think what I can do to make sure that I don't harm my ears is to obviously not put my headphones on full blast, is to also like avoid putting things that I don't know in my ears. Just making sure that they clean, and that is it. I don't need to do anything else, just leave them alone.
Good day, my name is Monet Angel Nengobera. What I do in order to protect my ears is that I avoid loud noises and I also clean them gently. It is important that we do not put objects in our ears because they might reach to the eardrum and actually you may go deaf or may have complications in hearing, and you can also hurt yourself with the object, or you can hurt your ear with the object. Activities that are harmful to our ears are loud music, fireworks, and inserting objects into ears. I enjoy listening to music, nature sounds, and just any other sounds. We can protect our ears by keeping volume low, wearing earplugs, and taking breaks from loud music. Thank you and have a lovely day.
Hello everyone, I'm Mushfika Talib. Taking care of your body inside and out is really important. So let's talk about taking care of your ears. I look after my ears by cleaning them every day with water, face wash, and an earbud or Q-tip. Earbuds should actually be the only things you put in your ears, besides earplugs or earphones. Other than that, don't try to fit anything else in your ears, since it could end up being very dangerous and damaging. Some activities that could be harmful to your hearing is listening to really loud music constantly, not wearing earplugs when you need to, and scratching the inside of your ears too much. I personally enjoy listening to music through my headphones, so to avoid the risk of damaging my hearing, I always make sure not to play my music too loud. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Greetings. Today I'll be talking about, so I look after my ears because I know without a hearing sense it will be tough, as I see other kids who actually can't hear. I actually feel like it's tough for them. And I avoid putting some objects in my ears because they can damage my ears and I can cause a lot of health problems and troubles for my ears. And some activities that can be harmful to hearing sight are that when you listen to a lot of music when it's too high and things like that, and then when you want to look after your ears, most of the time you should make sure you look after them, and you must listen to smooth sounds like I do, and make sure that nothing gets into your ears, and always keep your ears clean. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Yolanda Mzobe. I am 10 years old. Today I'll be talking about how do I take care of my ears. It is important to avoid putting objects in your ears because you might go to the hospital and get operated and at the end you'll be deaf. You might be deaf or you might be lucky sometime. The activities that might be harmful in your hearing is when you're putting objects, people scream inside your ears, scratching your ears. They might get itchy or operated. The sound I enjoy listening to me is music, amapiano, but I don't like to open the radio too much because sometimes they say it might cause your ears to feel itchy or they might start beeping. I make sure that they don't harm my ears because I put the sound down and I don't put the sound on my ear. Even if the music is playing, I just put the phone next to me or hold it to listen, as long as I can hear the music.
Hello friends and happy Tuesday. Today let's talk about our ears. Ears play a crucial role in helping us hear the beautiful sounds of the world, from the cheerful chirping of birds to our favorite tunes. Just like we care for our teeth and eyes, it's essential to look after our ears too. So, how can we keep them healthy and safe? First, remember to keep your ears clean. When you wash up, gently wash around your ears, but avoid putting anything inside them, like cotton swabs. Inserting objects can push dirt or wax further in and cause harm. Your ears are capable of cleaning themselves, so it's best to let them do their natural job. Next, be mindful of loud sounds. If you enjoy listening to music through headphones, keep the volume at a safe level. Loud noises such as music, fireworks, or machinery can harm the delicate parts of your ears. It's wise to use ear protection like earmuffs or earplugs when you're exposed to loud environments for extended periods. Also, never insert sharp items in your ears. Objects like pencils, paper clips, or even your fingers can injure the inner ear. Poking or scratching can lead to infections or lasting damage. If you think something is wrong with your ear, always ask your parents or teachers for assistance instead of trying to fix it on your own. Lastly, keep your ears dry, especially after swimming or bathing. Water trapped in your ear can cause infections. You can tilt your head to help the water drain out or gently dry the outer part of your ear with a clean towel. By following these easy tips, you can safeguard your ears and continue enjoying all the wonderful sounds around you.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha.
When self-made billionaire Wilton Knight rescues police detective Lieutenant Michael Long after a near-fatal shot to the face, he gives him a new identity and a new name, Michael Knight. Paired with the unique Knight Industries 2000 aka kit, they are brought in during situations where direct action might provide the only feasible solution. Kusazo Shuba and Michael Knight and Kit are ready to rise to the occasion. Channel your best retro with Knight Rider, weekdays at 12 p.m. only on S3. Open up. S3.
Attention all caregivers of children. Are you and your children's vaccinations up to date? Vaccinations can prevent serious diseases and prevent hospital stays. Protect your little ones by getting them vaccinated. Don't wait until it's too late. Talk to your healthcare provider today about getting your child vaccinated against serious childhood diseases. Because health matters. This message is brought to you by Sanofi and the National Department of Health.
Weeknights on S3 are anything but ordinary. BBC Primetime brings you the best of British television from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Open your mind to Life on Death Row, Thursdays at 9 p.m. and Resistance in a Hostile Environment, a 3-part documentary showcasing turning points which would go on to define race relations in the UK for a generation. Thursdays at 10 p.m. Wind down your weeknights with The Outlaws, Fridays at 9 p.m. and explore the world's most dangerous roads at 10 p.m. Channel your best entertainment with BBC Primetime, only on S3. Open up. S3.
Did you know that 80% of South Africa's barley is sold to the beer industry? This locally secured barley, along with other natural ingredients, plays a vital role in beer production, contributing 2.2 billion rand to the country's agricultural GDP. You can join South African breweries on the 3rd of October in Caledon as they delve into the state of the beer economy. SAB, brewing a future full of cheers. South Africa, be sharp, not for sale to persons under the age of 18.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
All right, wrapping up the last 5 minutes of the show. Now we are catching up with Nhlanhla Mtize, who is the provincial secretary for the Gauteng wing of DENOSA, which is the Democratic Nursing Association of South Africa. And we just thought, well, why not, in our last few minutes, touch base with, the male sisters and find out about their work in the sector. How are you doing?
Hi, Bridget. I'm well, and good afternoon.
Thank you for taking the time. Let's talk about quickly about just male nurses in service in the healthcare sector. I don't think you'll get celebrated enough.
Definitely, we are not. Good afternoon to the listeners as well. I just want to make a correction on the introduction. Bridget, I'm a provincial secretary for HOSPERSA, not DINOSA, Health and Other Professions Trade Union of South Africa. Yes.
Oh, you know what? You've just gotten my producers into trouble, but thank you for that correction. Yes, let's talk about male nurses, male healthcare providers, and why they're not celebrated enough. Nhlanhla? Did we lose you? I think we've lost our WhatsApp connection to Nhlanhla because of network, but also just looking at the time, we don't really have 10 minutes to give to the conversation. By the time they get reconnected behind the scenes, the show will be wrapped up. So maybe let's it will be better to make the executive decision to bed this, and we carve out some 10 minutes tomorrow, and we try and we have this conversation. In the meantime, my team does owe me chocolate for getting the organization of which Nhlanhla Mtize came from. They look like deer caught in the headlights. But definitely, I'll be enjoying a chocolate tomorrow and then working out the calories come Friday. But yeah, I think let's leave that there so that we can give it some time, because 2 minutes is definitely not enough time to have this conversation. And we thought we wanted to end the show in a little bit of a feel-good nature. We'll pick it up tomorrow. We thank you for being in conversation with us. We always appreciate you choosing to stay on SAFM and continue having the conversations that move us. It's not over yet. From 3 o'clock, John is still in the building for Ashraf for the National Pulse. So he takes over from 3 until 6 o'clock with everything that's on the agenda there. For myself and my team, we'll see you tomorrow. God willing, inshallah, we get to do it again.
Ngaba Mabece on SAFM.
I mean, we're shining the spotlight on road carnages and the number of children who die in accidents.
It is a very, very necessary conversation to have. Our children are extremely vulnerable in traffic, and every day between 7 and 8 children die on our roads as pedestrians. And it doesn't make the headlines, it doesn't make the news. Even Nelson Mandela's own grandchild died in a car crash.
Yeah, that's right. On the opening of the World Cup in 2010. Yep.
His son died in a crash.
Who?
Nelson Mandela's son.
Uthembekile, that's right.
Many years ago, he was in jail. He wasn't allowed to go to the funeral, if I remember correctly.
That's true.
So nobody is excluded from being a victim of a road crash.
Peggy Mars, founder of Wheel Well.
Tuesday Takeover on The Viewpoint.
The top stories at 3 o'clock. Efforts to integrate renewable energy sources, and Premier says Lusikisiki murder suspects will be arrested. A very good afternoon. Ke Modupi Makgalemele with the news. Energy Minister Kosian Soramokgopa has called for a concerted effort to integrate the country's renewable energy sources to mobilize resources to fund the country's just energy transition. He delivered a keynote address at the Standard Bank 4th Annual Climate Summit in Joburg. The country is looking at integrating its energy sources and to move from its reliance on coal-powered stations. Ramokgopa has encouraged the private sector to cooperate with the government.
Our own computation suggests that we'll need about 1.5 trillion rands for us to achieve the kind of ambition that we have set for ourselves. So we welcome the fact that for the 4th year running, Standard Bank has occasioned this conversation. So bringing into the fold, if you like, the fraternity to say how best can they support this net zero path. So it's important that in this conversation, we don't leave anyone behind, and all the major players also are able to take a position and see how best they can contribute towards it's a country effort, of course, led by government.
Eastern Cape Premier Oscar Mabuyane has assured residents of Lusikisiki that the perpetrators of the mass murder that took place at Ngobazana village will be brought to book. Mabuyane, together with Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, are in the area to visit the victims' families. They also addressed a community meeting this afternoon. 17 people were gunned down while sleeping at the village as they prepared for a traditional ceremony over the weekend. One of the injured 6 died later in hospital. Mabuyane has also promised that the government will assist the families.
We can't continue coexisting with criminality at this level. Well, we are here today to also continue making our presence felt, but also strengthening the police work that has been done, but also continue with our awareness programs. Post this incident, we'll be meeting with families. Part of that is to plan and prepare how do we move forward with families. Government will be coming on board to assist, but that is a very sensitive issue that we would want to discuss with families properly.
The Border Management Authority has confirmed the immediate suspension of a female immigration officer for being in possession of over 3,700 passports belonging to foreign nationals from Malawi. She was found with 3,700 rand in cash, which she could not account for. 6 suspected illegal immigrants have also been arrested. The 52-year-old was arrested in a police sting operation at the Bridge port of entry on Sunday whilst she was on duty. The Weather Service says rain can be expected in different parts of the country over the next few days. It briefed the media in Pretoria. The service's Rudzani Malala says there are chances of light rain over different parts of Mpumalanga.
Looking at the general weather prospects in the days ahead, over the next few days, the surface high region south of the subcontinent will continue